anybody who is watching this will also hear the questions that I just forgot the first 5 minutes of. So, okay, and I'm gonna try to prop this up since I'm having to use.
Would you like to use this?
Yes, that would be awesome, but you'll have to remind me to give it back. Okay. Thank you. I may have to put it, let's see. This is fun. Yeah, I may have to. It's not going to be high enough. Okay. I hope if you're watching this, you can hear me. If not, I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can. Daryl, question?
So are the exercises and critical thinking homework that's on Canvas, or is that?
Yes, and in your book. Yeah. All of so the information at the end tells you where those specific questions are. So chapter 1, section 1.2, you're going to do exercises 1 and 2. 1.3, exercise 2. Does that make sense? On the schedule of classes part, I put the page numbers because I wrongly thought that everybody would have the same page numbers when they open the book, but that is not the case. So if you don't have page numbers, it's probably easier to go by the section number. But if you're in Canvas doing it, and I highly encourage you to do it in Canvas, those questions are going to be with that information. So in Canvas, it's going to be exercise 1, and the question will actually be there for you. If I had done that on here, your syllabus would be 100 pages long. But in Canvas, the questions are already there for you. So after you read the book, or if you want to do them as you go, after you read section 1.1, you can go and answer that question. I would probably wait to the end so that you only have to save it at the end. You may also save it in a Word document and upload it that way. So you have 2 options. Type it in a Word document and upload the document. That way you have a copy of it. Or you can actually type it in the assignment that way. Yeah.
When is our first assignment on chapter 1 due? Because on Canvas it doesn't have a due date yet.
It doesn't? It
says
should.
no due date. On module 1,
Yes.
it says no due date, individual assignment, overview, and instruction.
It
Yeah.
I might put it for module 2 because we're going by week.
Yes, it's in module 2. It's not in module 1. Yes. Module 2 homework is the assignment chapter 1. It's due the week after we cover the chapter.
Okay.
So somebody want to look in module 2 and see if the due date's on there?
I only see module.
I
There's
can't
only
see
module 1.
You can't see anything else?
It's just module 1.
Okay. Will you email or text me and tell me to correct that? I want them all unlocked, and I think the default in Canvas is that you have to complete each week before the second one unlocks, and I'm trying to go through and unlock those. But if you send me a reminder, I will make sure that I do that after this class.
We have to put badges, so we get these badges, we have to put it in every week just to get them.
I don't know what any of that is.
Because
I have no clue.
I figured out you could put literally any link.
I'm gonna try to get rid of that.
Okay.
If you want to text me and say, Dr. Christian, see if you can get rid of the badges or whatever. I think there's a way I can turn those off. Again, that's another default. We didn't put those in there. They're just there, and I've got to.
I have literally having to been.
Are you doing that in every single one of your classes?
If they make me put it in every single
You have
class.
to do the building with Canvas badge, you have to submit that in every class before it lets you unlock any assignment.
Okay, that's absurd. I'm gonna see if we can turn that off because it has nothing to do with your class.
My biology teacher turned it off.
Okay, I figured there's a way to do it. I just have to figure out what that is.
So the first.
This semester is gonna be a learning experience all around.
So the first, individual assignment overview and instruction for, module 1 is what exactly?
For week 1, it's just basically telling you to read your stuff, that kind of thing. The assignment for chapter 1 is in module 2.
Well, there is an individual assignment overview and instruction in module 1, of which I'm supposed to submit something.
Okay,
I don't
it
know.
shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I'll turn it off.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
You
you.
wanna go ahead and text you to remind you?
Thank you.
Okay.
I apologize. It's a learning curve. That's why, if y'all tell me you notice something that doesn't look quite right, I'll fix it. I'm gonna be working all weekend on all of the different classes in Canvas. Because a lot of things automatically publish, even if I don't have anything in there. So I'm gonna go through and try to undo all that too. But my intention, this is how it should be. Your assignment that's due each Thursday will be for the chapter that we have already covered the week before. Now, if we get behind, it may not always be that way, but that's how it's set up on your syllabus. So next Thursday's assignment is in module 2, but it's on chapter 1. The chapters won't always stay that way. Some weeks we're gonna cover 2 chapters, but they will always be what we have already covered and what you have already read, not what you're reading that week. Okay, so today we are talking about the introduction to mass media, an overview of mass media and its effect on culture. I do have a PowerPoint. Let's see if it's been 17 minutes. And Lord willing, the TV works today. How have y'all's other classes been going?
Already missed the assignment because of the badges. I figured out this morning that I had to upload the badges, so now I'm late on an assignment.
I feel quite sure that faculty are going to be understanding with you guys because we need you to be understanding with us.
Finally got my French ebook fixed, so that was good.
Good. Let's see, here we go. I don't know that I have posted the PowerPoint yet or not.
Well, for module 1.
I did? Okay, good. So many little things to remember. Okay, let's see. That's the second thing that's worked today. Okay. All right, that's still working. All right. Did Daryl, Kylie, y'all have your syllabus? Thank you, Kylie. All right, so this class, we're gonna cover some things that probably feel historical about different areas of mass communication, but we're also going to include the effects that different forms of mass communication have had and continue to have on culture and American society as a whole. Throughout history, media have changed the way that we relate to pretty much everything, the way we relate to each other individually, socially, in groups, the way we behave in our economy, and politically. And y'all can probably all pause for a minute and think about, even in your own lives, how media affect you in those areas and in other areas, in areas of religion, in the workplace, in school. I mean, we can see how media is affecting our school right now. Just some things to consider. Can y'all hear me okay? This drives me crazy because it echoes back and I hear myself like I'm speaking into a microphone, and I don't know if it sounds like that for y'all too. It's putting it up there for y'all to read?
Yeah.
That's funny.
I like it.
Is it doing that the whole time?
Yeah.
It's really cool.
I guess that's good. If it saves it so that people who aren't here can actually see that too.
And then when we go back on to look at the PowerPoint, we'll know what you said so we can take notes on the side. of
Yeah,
stuff.
like it drives me crazy that my voice is echoing back to me.
It just put that up there.
This is funny.
This is gonna be a very interesting class.
It's gonna be a fun semester. Okay. I hope I say nothing inappropriate and it's recorded. I would never say anything inappropriate anyway. All right. Consider recent presidential campaigns. If y'all pay attention to presidential campaigns, if you don't, you should. This one's gonna be fabulous. How that has impacted how we interact with the candidates, how we interact with even our family members as it relates to politics and social media, how we relate to our friends, our unfriends in some case. People unfriend each other over political stuff now.
Like, me and my dad have an agreement that we will not talk about politics with each other because we don't agree with each other ever on politics.
Oh, but you gotta learn to talk to people. I have a sign. I may bring it over here because I'm over here more than I am in my office in the Alumni Center. But I have a sign on the door of that office that says, "Warning, politics and religion spoken here." Because I love to talk about politics and religion. But yeah, you gotta learn how to talk to each other. But that is one of the things that media has kind of corrupted, for lack of a better word. Part of that is because of the way our president and other political figures communicate with the media and communicate then with us using social media and other things. The invention of the printing press did the same thing, but on an even more revolutionary scale. So, communication scholars and others argue that the invention of the printing press in the 1450s is perhaps the most revolutionary invention in history. Why do you think that is?
Because everything is media.
Because
I know, right? That wouldn't be good. Everything is media now. That started it. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna, oh, sorry.
Okay, so many of the things that like came after, they came as a result of people being able to educate themselves because of the printing press.
Yes.
That's what I was gonna say.
Exactly. Every kind of mass communication followed that. That literally was the beginning of mass communication. Prior to that, it was verbal or handwritten. Everything had to be handwritten. Nothing was duplicated. So somebody write down a Bible, it had to be written again. There was no mass communication. Everything that has come after, there have been things that have been revolutionary. A lot of things, though, have just been evolutionary following the printing press, the upgrades in printing, those kinds of things. What are some other things in mass communication history would you say have been revolutionary?
Radio,
Radio, why?
because radio was able to reach a lot of people, who had their radio in their house.
Because some people couldn't read, So whenever I've spoken to them, it was reaching a more larger, group of people.
Mm-hmm. And
TV.
TV? How?
They came in and like all the shows that was on the radio, they brought them TV so people could look at it.
Yes.
And watch them.
So radio brought sound into people's homes. Television took that sound and added visuals to that. Like when I think about that, you know, we take all of this for granted. When I think about like what it must have been like the first time you could hear somebody across the world, or you could see a war while you're sitting in your living room. Like that's just crazy to think about.
What about like the invention of like social media?
Social media is definitely a big one. What have y'all skipped over? The internet. The internet in your lifetime, a baby when most of you guys were born, but the internet, I would argue, is probably, if I had to pick, second to the printing press because of all the things that have come after the internet. Y'all just don't know how hard it was having to go to a library and look up stuff in a card catalog.
My mom used to talk to me about that.
How to type on a have y'all ever typed on a typewriter? Typing on a typewriter and having to fix everything. You mess up, you gotta start over on the page.
I know whenever I was in elementary school, they were teaching us how to find books with the cards. And then by the time I was in second grade, everything went digital. And so I didn't understand how to use the cards.
Yeah, it's really hard to remember. I mean, most of my life was this way, but it's really hard to remember. It's happened so fast. How hard it used to be to gather information. Now you can look up, I mean, y'all are probably like me, since you're communication folks. Anytime you wonder something, what do?
Google it.
You Google it. We don't even think about it. Every now and then, my old school self will kick in, and I'm like, gosh, I wonder about that. And then somebody will go, look it up. And I'm like, well, no, duh, I can do that now. You know? It's second nature. We Google it. Google has become a word of something that we do as a result of that. And then social media, like Austin said. How has social media affected the way we communicate?
Because now we can talk to anybody at any time.
Right?
On many different platforms.
Many different platforms, and different platforms are used for different things. We can meet our future spouse who will spend the rest of our life, who we would never have met because of social media, right? We can argue with people anonymously. They never have to know us. Have an alternate persona. Not that any of you guys would do that, but I joke because one of our professors in this department, I hope none of you are the ones that did this. One of our professors in this department, it's fine. I don't know who did it, so I'm not gonna identify anyone, but a professor in this department who teaches online for us got a text message from a student, because we don't know y'all's phone numbers unless you give them to us, before the class started, basically telling her everything that he or she thought was wrong with the way that she set up the course. And I'm like, wait, this person hasn't even started the course and they're telling you how they would set up the course. This is an undergraduate college student. But social media, internet, digital communication allows for that kind of thing.
There's also the negative side to it, like with social media and the internet, it brought on a whole new level of bullying, and
Yes.
we still to this day are having trouble on where does the lines meet.
Absolutely, and we're going to talk about not just in every different type of medium we talk about this semester, we're going to look at not just the positives that have happened in society, but some of them have also brought a lot of negatives too. Like I was commenting a few minutes ago that last night was one of those rare nights now that we got to sit down and have a family dinner. Trinity came in from her first week at University of Louisiana. Most of her classes have gone online, so she finished her last class of the week and she drove back home. my youngest son was off of work, and so we sat down to a family dinner. Her boyfriend got to come over, my boyfriend got to come over, and it was really nice. But because of so many distractions, most of the time Patrick eats in front of the TV, I'm eating in front of the internet. All of those things have affected the way we not just communicate with our families, but the way we're disconnected. You know, we may be connected to somebody on the other side of the world, but we're disconnected from the people that we live with on a daily basis. And there's a really good book about that called Bowling Alone, if that's an area that interests you. So there's definitely, like Sierra said, definitely positives and negatives to every form of mass communication.
Like my family has a rule that if we are sitting at the table or out to eat, we can't have our phones with us. Just so that we have.
I like that rule. I like that rule. I don't necessarily always follow that rule, but when my children were younger, we did. And when my children were younger, I was very blessed. All four of them loved to read, and I like to think it's because they saw that modeled for them. But I see other people, my niece and nephew too, that I see all the time growing up. They were always connected to media. We go out to a restaurant, one of them would have their iPad. And my children were like, well, we want to get on. And I'm like, no. And it does, you know, parents that have done that have actually done you a good service, because you're probably much better interacting with your peers, adults, and other people, because you weren't allowed to constantly be on it. Now, I also love media for children. There's so many good types of media out there. Television programs that are educational, games that help teach you not just knowledge, but also hand-eye coordination. Like, there's so many things that are available. It's not all negative, but it's a fine balance to make sure that you maintain good communication skills, because when you go out into the workforce, employers still want to see that you know how to communicate on a one-on-one or to a small group of people as well. Emily, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, so like just because of like YouTube, my brother, he's only 6, but he's able to multiply just because he watches YouTube.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's crazy.
There's some amazing things, and parents are stretched a lot. There's more single parent homes, mothers or fathers who are doing it on their own. It's very hard. Or if there's multiple children, you know, mom can be cooking dinner while a child is learning how to multiply on the internet. It's really an amazing time to be alive, but the trade-off is we do lose some of those, I hate to say, but family and social interactions with people that we're around all the time. And this is, you know, partly my fault. Y'all may have the same problem. I don't know my neighbors. When I was a kid, I knew all the neighbors on the street. I played with the children on the street who were around my age. I knew, you know, Miss Janine lived there, Miss Rose lived there, if I ever needed something, and they knew all of us. That's not the case anymore for most people, especially in suburbs. I don't know any of my neighbors by name, except for a lady that lives catty corner and the man that lives in the house next door. I don't know his wife's name. I don't know my across the street neighbor's name. I wave at them, but we don't interact. And that's unfortunate. We lose that sense of community, and the ramifications of that are numerous. Crime goes up, we ignore what's going on the street. We don't know if those people belong there or not. There's a dehumanizing effect that comes with not knowing who people are. You don't care as much. Okay, basic roles that media do in our lives. There are 4 main roles. Media provide us with entertainment. This is so strange, having to record myself talking. Media provide us with entertainment. How do you guys interact with media for entertainment?
YouTube.
You watch YouTube. A lot of young people watch YouTube. I don't watch YouTube. Do what?
Memes.
Memes! That's a good one, and that's a relatively new one. I actually do love memes. I have lots of news apps on my phone, and BuzzFeed actually will send me like lists of the funniest memes or the funniest tweets of the week. I don't go to YouTube much unless, you know, somebody goes, oh, you gotta watch this video. But I gotta say, I do love memes. Memes are very entertaining. How else? Video games, yes. A lot of people are entertained by video games. Video games can also be educational too. Kylie?
TV and streaming services.
Yes, television/streaming. A lot of times when we say television now, we don't really mean television traditionally, right? We're talking about Netflix or Hulu, YouTube TV, etc., etc.
Instagram Reels.
Yes, Instagram
Reels.
Reel. There's so many. TikTok, I guess, is entertaining for some people
Yes.
and maddening for the president. Lots and lots of forms of entertainment. And then traditional forms of entertainment. If we ever, yes, I love books.
I love those too.
How many of you love to read books? That makes me happy. You halfway love to read books, Kylie?
I grew up watching people read all the time, so
Yes,
I just got into it and I was like, wow, even if it's fictional, you can still learn a lot from it.
yes.
My friends kind of threw books at my face once they realized I wasn't reading any of them. They were like, you have to read this.
There's just, that's what, book length journalism is my passion. I love narrative nonfiction, historical journalism, love it. Even on subjects that I didn't necessarily love in school, like science and math, I'll use those two examples. Chemistry, there's some amazing journalism books that make me love it. Hot Zone by Richard Preston. He writes a lot of things about all the different viruses and outbreaks of disease that have happened throughout history in a way that make you feel like you're watching a movie. In fact, some of them have been turned into movies. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. If y'all haven't read that, that's a life-changing book. You learn so much about science and medical things, and there's so many books like that even though you don't think you're interested in something, make you interested in it. You can learn so much. So that's my love. I love books. Magazines. Some of you guys may still read magazines. I read People magazine cover to cover every week. That's my guilty pleasure magazine. Not only is it about the entertainment industry, but they've got true crime in there, and they've got who's together, who's breaking up. Like, it's just fun. It's entertaining. So all different forms of mass media, in addition to radio, Spotify.
Yeah, I was about to say one.
Yeah, a lot
I
of.
love podcasts.
I love podcasts, especially the one that I did. You should all listen to. Do I?
It's a plug.
Yes. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and it's a wonderful experience. I wish that I had more time to do another one, but so far I haven't. Okay, second, we've already touched on this a little bit because some forms of media that are entertaining also educate us. So the second role that media play in our lives is information and education. We've already talked about how easy it is to gather information now. Google, it's also easy to gather misinformation from Google, but the media provide us access to information and educate us. 6-year-olds learning multiplication is just one example. Canvas, literally access to your education. Online textbooks, etc., etc., etc. One of the roles, actually the most important role, that the media play for the good of society is probably that role of information, gathering the means for us to get education. Third, it provides us a public forum. Starting with the invention of the printing press, which ushered in people having access, large numbers of people having access to the same information, people can share thoughts, ideas. people can rise up and rebel against their country and create a whole new country because more people have access to the information and can communicate about it. And fast forward, we get all the way to social media, a new kind of public forum. And then finally, the media. We think about this typically when we think about news media, but social media and the internet have allowed pretty much anybody to be part of that news media now, journalists. Fourth function is government watchdog. The media allows for oversight of the people in powerful positions of the government. So that will actually be on your test. This is something that is important to remember. The 4 roles that media play in our lives: entertainment, information and education, public forum, and government watchdog. And there's many more examples in your textbook from the ones that we just talked about. Okay, we're gonna go through a few now individually that we've talked about a little bit so far. So the printing press, perhaps, I think I said this already, I'll say it again, the most important invention in history. We've talked about why already. A couple of things that we didn't mention is that it allowed for the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation to actually happen. Why are those 2 things important in our history?
The Renaissance was pretty much the beginning of critical thinking. People were no longer just kind of following along with what was said. There were things.
Very good, exactly.
One
And-
of the highlights of the Renaissance was the fact that people were searching and discovering things just like the early Greeks and Romans were, and they kind of reclaimed that idea of humanism and trying to make humanity a good thing, and that's led us to where we are today with
Yes.
technology.
Absolutely, and y'all can see, fast forward, how much that means to literally where we are today. What about the Protestant Reformation?
Well, considering we're a Baptist college, it seems pretty important.
It's a very good point, right? Very good point. Who can tell me what the Protestant Reformation was?
I think it has to do with Luther.
Martin Luther,
We put the notes on the
95.
The 95.
95 Theses, yes. Doing what?
Me.
Calling out the church.
Calling out the church. And if you've ever read the history of the Catholic Church
Yep.
prior to that time, I joke that today's Southern Baptists, I don't think would like Martin Luther very much, but he was a very important figure to usher in the way that we think about religion and spirituality, a one-on-one relationship with a personal God today, right? Prior to that, I'm not going to get into all the Catholic stuff. Catholicism is a very interesting religion. Some of you may be Catholic, but Protestants and Catholics have very distinct differences in the way they worship. All right, newspapers. Each of these also, there's chapters on them in the textbook, so this is just a little bit of an overview of some of the media that we're going to be talking about.
Someone in like the 1800s, I think, hooked a steam engine to the printing press.
Yes.
And that enabled the mass creation of newspapers.
Yes, very good, and we will talk about that at length in the newspaper chapter. That was an evolutionary thing that happened in the printing press, and there were a few others. But like she said, newspapers being able to be mass produced lowered the price of them, and this happened during the Industrial Revolution, lowered the price of the newspapers to where common folks could afford to read a newspaper. That era is called the penny press because a lot of the papers actually were a penny, sold on, streets in the cities by newsboys. Y'all have probably all seen them in movies or pictures. Regular folks could afford to buy and read a newspaper. Literacy rates went up, more people could read. Fast forward, radio and television. As you guys mentioned a few minutes ago, radio and then television were the first non-print form of mass media. Well, radio was, and then television added moving pictures or visuals to that. If you guys have ever watched a video, and we may have time to do that in class. If not, I'll try to remember to post a link. You've seen some of the very, very earliest television broadcasts when they were first going around and letting people in different cities look at it. It literally is like moving pictures. It's nothing like we've grown up seeing today, but it was a phenomenon. The development of television, and we'll talk more about this later too, the development of television started prior to World War II, and then the war happened and kind of stopped that. So it was actually after World War II when people started getting televisions in their homes. In the South, it was slower to happen. I know my mother says she was in college before they actually got a television. So that would have been the mid-1960s before they got a television. So a lot of families in the South didn't have extra income to go buy that. So what a lot of people did, and this probably happened outside of the South too, but there'd be one person in the community that would have a television, and everybody would go over to watch, Milton Berle or whatever the program was, Ed Sullivan. And so television was a way to bring the community together in that way too. Everybody watched the same shows. There was not a lot of programming. There was no cable. There was no cable to the 80s. Everybody was watching the same things. So it was a form of mass communication in that the audience was a national audience. Everybody was watching this weekly program. And then I just mentioned Vietnam up here because Vietnam was the first, your textbook refers to it as the first living room war. Why do you think that is? Because it was the first war that people could actually see from their living rooms. They were sitting there watching television and they could see what was going on. As a result, the American reaction to Vietnam was different from World War II, right? We think about World War II as those folks as the greatest generation, right? They were revered. Everybody was in this together. It was a massive war effort. That wasn't the case with Vietnam, was it? What was the case with Vietnam? When people saw that in their living room and more people started seeing it, what happened?
They didn't like that anymore.
People didn't like it. They didn't like it. What were you gonna say?
People started becoming against the war. They didn't want
Yes.
the war.
People started growing. They don't like it. People started protesting. More and more people. What?
I think it was called like the Peace Corps. Like there was a bunch of people that were going to other countries and peacefully
Yes.
protesting the war.
Yes, it was a unique experience in America. That had not happened before.
Do you think if TV had been invented in World War II, there would be a similar reaction?
I don't know. That's a really good question. That's a really good question. My favorite piece of journalism of all time is actually the book Hiroshima, or Hiroshima, some people say, by John Hersey. And it's about the dropping of the atomic bomb. And I teach that book sometimes in a different class. I do think that if that book had been a movie or a miniseries that people could see when it first came out, I do think more people would think differently? So that's a really good question, Emily. That's something to really think about. Maybe. I think, the stuff that we know today about wars in recent time, even if y'all have never watched Collateral Murder, has anybody ever watched Collateral Murder? It's, there's like a 17-minute version. It's a longer version, but about a 17-minute version on YouTube. I would encourage you to watch it. It's the video that put WikiLeaks on the map. Do y'all know what WikiLeaks is? Okay, good. It's the decrypted video that Bradley Manning, who became Chelsea Manning, sent to a reporter who got it to Julian Assange, that really shows American soldiers lying and killing innocents in Afghanistan, I believe it was. It's the video literally that made WikiLeaks a thing and put Bradley Manning in prison, and now he's been, his sentence is commuted, but he got a life sentence as a traitor for turning over this document, because he was a soldier. So he was convicted of treason. But watching that video, it really makes you wonder what we don't know about war and the decisions, and we're lied to as the American population. So that's a really good thing to think about. Like, would it be different? I bet it would be. I bet it would be. Modern media, relatively modern media, obviously. Telegraph was invented in 1837. 20 years later, the first transatlantic cable was sent, which created instantaneous communication across the ocean, across continents. We mentioned the internet, but prior to the internet, the invention of computers. I mentioned having to type papers on typewriters. Computers, first word processors, which were a computer, and now computers made that progression possible. So let's talk about what convergence is. So who can tell me what convergence, when I say convergence media, what does that mean?
Converge, multimedia, like all, it's like flexible almost.
Does it mean to go into something? Convergence to go into something.
I can't hear you.
Convergence doesn't mean to go into something.
That's one term. We're going to talk about 6 different kinds of convergence. But when we talk about specifically to media, yes, it means multiple different forms. It means all kinds of media merging into one. We're going to talk about the 6 different kinds, but basically, convergence media, well, maybe I'll talk about it as I go through the different types of convergence. And I'm gonna have to have my reading glasses. This is so fun. Okay, if you're looking at your textbook, you can follow along with me on the textbook. First kind of convergence is economic. So economic convergence is when a company or corporation controls many different products or services within the same industry. So if you've ever looked at a media ownership chart, you will see, yes,
Could you repeat that again?
what it is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Economic.
Economic convergence is when one particular company or corporation controls many different products or services in the same industry. And I'll give you an example. In media.
Disney?
Let's good example. So if you look at a media ownership chart, you will see 5 multimedia conglomerates essentially own 90 some odd percent, I don't know what, of all the different kinds of media in the country. I can't tell you off the top of my head which companies own what, because so many times they're buying and selling and merging. But yeah, Disney owns, oh dear Lord, everything. We think about Disney, or I did growing up, we think about Disney as a very wholesome, family-friendly company. Is it Disney Plus, the new streaming service? So Disney Plus has all the family-friendly shows, Disney movies, etc. Disney also is one of the largest purveyors of pornography in the country because they own many of those kinds of companies too. News Corp. When we think about News Corp, and it may be the same company as Disney now. Let's see if I can pull that up for y'all to look at. I talk a lot. I always get behind. But I do want y'all to see this. Let's see, that one might be good to look at. This is not a one that's like, doesn't list everything, but it's good enough y'all can see some of what I'm talking about. So Disney here owns ABC, Lifetime, ESPN, and that's just 3. There's many, many more. There's much better charts than this. NBC, you can see some of the things that they own. This is just the media that they own. They also own other types of corporations as well. Like that chart, let's see. I'll try to remember to post some, but y'all, if you Google, this one's good too. Like you can see just how many different types of companies are owned literally by 5 corporations. So that is economic convergence. Second is organic. And probably everybody in this room participates in organic convergence. This is when you're watching a television show. I'll use television as an example because that's usually when I do it. You're watching a television show, you're also texting with a friend, and you're listening to music in the background. I'm always using multiple media at the same time. At night, when I'm binging on Desperate Housewives, I am playing poker on my phone always, and probably texting 2 or 3 people in Facebook Messenger. Might be responding to a text message from a student. This is what your teacher's doing. She's watching Desperate Housewives while she's answering your questions about homework. That's organic convergence. Third, cultural convergence. And y'all can probably think of examples of this too. Cultural convergence happens when stories flow across different media platforms from one component. So Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean is a movie. It's also a ride at Disney. The character appears in different kinds of advertisements, etc., etc. Books that get turned into movies, that get turned into toys. Video games.
I think the book listed Harry Potter as one.
Harry Potter's across so many different things. Yes.
And then Star Wars, now that like Disney owns it, there's video games, there's books, there's comic books, there's movies, there's TV, like there's so many
Yeah,
different.
there's conventions, there's everything. Video games. That's cultural convergence. That's an example of cultural convergence. Fourth, global. Global convergence. This is when cultures that are geographically far from each other still influence each other. Bollywood, Nollywood, these are examples. There's a really good article called, I can't remember the name of it now, but it basically talks about the Americanization of the world, that American culture, Western culture, has an effect on the rest of the world. And finally, technological convergence. When I think of convergent media, technological convergence is usually what I think of first. It is the merging of the technologies to have the ability to watch television shows on a television, to watch them online, to watch them on your phone, to play video games on a video game machine, to play them on your phone, to play them on a computer. Literally the convergence on many, many different types of platforms. So the reason that I think of technological convergence first is because as a journalist, and I teach journalism and public relations, my job is to teach you guys, or our job in this division, to teach you guys to be able to be convergent media practitioners when you leave here. So if you're a journalism major, you need to be able to produce a traditional news story. You need to be able to take that story and turn it into a broadcast story. You need to be able to tweet it. You need to be able to send it out here, radio, etc. Traditional forms, and also all the new social media forms too. That's what technological convergence looks like in practice. Public relations the same way. You're producing content for lots of different media forms. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I want you to do this little exercise in class if we have time. So just go to, you can write on here and turn it in. I guess I should hold it up for whoever's watching this. I could probably post it too. Anyway. Even passing papers back is, you can't do it anymore. It's too many hands touch it. I forgot to take my temperatures. why y'all do this on pictures. There's so many things to remember. Okay, so I want you to pick a media message of your choice. Pick something that you like, a television show, magazine, etc. And see, this is just a participation. I don't expect you to all be able to figure all this out because we haven't even gotten to this. We will cover these different things on Tuesday. I want you to do this before we do so that you can see if you kind of already get a grasp of understanding media literacy. So think of something that you watch or you read or you listen to, and then see if you can answer these questions. If you need to go online and look at it, that's perfectly fine. Or you can answer what you think now, and then see if you're right next week. Consider the author of the message. Who was the author and why they created it? Who do you think the intended audience for that media is? And how might people understand the media similarly, different groups, or differently? What's the purpose? What values, lifestyles, or points of view are represented or omitted? And then what types of techniques were used to grab your attention? Why do you like it? From a creative standpoint. You do not have to type your answers. I want you to do this in class. And then next week, when we talk about media literacy, some of what you're doing right now will become clearer to you. I just want you to start thinking about the purpose of media and what media is trying to tell you or teach you, even sometimes without your knowledge. Hopefully after this class, it won't be without your knowledge. You won't be a completely passive media user. You will start thinking about what different media forms are trying to teach you or indoctrinate you to or omit and not expose you to. Yes?
Could it be an advertising also?
Yes? See, I'm already behind, but we will catch up. Oh, and I'm going to take out some pictures. While y'all do this. That's the last thing we're going to do for the class period. When you get finished doing that, you can turn it in and be excused.